All right, so now the last video, the second video of this section C is also still on triangles, video 2, but now we're going to learn a little bit more about triangles. So we're going to know what their angle measurements add up to, and maybe you guys would have been able to identify that based on that one question I gave you or we talked about with the equal angular. Maybe you in your mind figured out what they add up to, and maybe you already know, but we're going to talk about what triangles add up to. And then based on having that piece of information, you're also going to then be able to solve for missing angles in a triangle or solve for a variable when given information on that. All right. But we're going to now be dealing with the angle measurements of a triangle, what they add up to, and then using that to help solve for problems. All right. So the main important thing you need to be able to take away from this video is that the sum of the angle measures of a triangle. So if we add up all the angle measurements of any triangle that we have, they will always add up to 180 degrees. So in this case, we have X, Y, and Z as our angle measurements. So X, Y, and Z will add up to 180. All right, so all triangles always add up to 180 degrees. There is a proof. This is actually called the Triangle Sum Theorem. And when you guys get into geometry, you'll actually prove how this happens. We can't show you that right now because there will be some information to prove that and to show you why it works 100% of the time. You don't know some of the information that would be leading up to it. So for right now, you just have to just take my word. But triangles always add up to 180 degrees. Okay, so since they always add up to 180 degrees, that's what you need to know, and that's what we will be using to solve some of these questions. So that's the main thing. The angles of a triangle add up to 180. That's what you must know. All right, so now let's use this information to go ahead and solve some questions. Okay, so for this problem here, it says find the value of x and then classify the triangle. So when I look at this, I see I have x degrees for this angle, 50 degrees for this one, and 28 degrees for this one. Well, we know based on the triangle sum theorem that we just learned that the three angles add up to be 180 degrees. So 28 plus 50 plus x is equal to 180 degrees. Well, 28 plus 50 is going to give me 78. So 78 plus x is equal to 180. And then to solve x, this is a pretty basic equation, we subtract 78 from both sides and get x is equal to 102. So now I'm going to write 102 here. Let me just use a different color so it's a little bit easier for us to see. So let's just do 102. Now if I'm going to classify, first off, we don't actually have any side measurements given to us, but if we knew that they were equal, they would have to give us tick marks. There's no tick marks. So that means that this is a scalene triangle from the sides. And then if we look at our angles, that one of our angles is greater than 90 degrees. So that means that this angle is obtuse. And if we have one obtuse angle, then that means it is an obtuse triangle. So the way that we would name this or classify this one is we start with our angle first. So we would say it is an obtuse scalene triangle. All right, so we name it by our angle, then our side, then name it a triangle. So we know that the three angles have to add up to 180 degrees, which now allows for us to solve for what x is. And then once we know that none of our sides are equal, then we know it's scalene, and then we can say it's an obtuse scalene triangle. All right, so that is solving for x and then classifying the triangle. Remember, we're not naming it, we are classifying it. And now let's just think real quick. Why can't we have, when we're talking about an obtuse triangle, it said that we had just one obtuse angle. Well, it should make sense as to why we can only have one, because an obtuse angle is greater than 90 degrees. So that means the lowest obtuse angle we can have is 91. And let's just say that we have two of them. Well, 91 plus 91 is already more than 180. Therefore, we wouldn't be able to have a third angle to give us this triangle. So if we actually have or try to make a triangle with more than one obtuse, it's impossible for us to actually create that triangle, which is why there's only one obtuse. And the same thing, with the right triangle, we can only have one because 90 plus 90 would give us 180 to begin with, which means that those two angles add up to what a triangle should be or can be, and therefore we can't have a third angle either. All right, so now there's one more problem, and that's it for this video. All right, it says find the value of x, then classify the triangle. So first, I see that we have these tick marks, so I'm just going to go ahead and write what I know that this is named by its side already, so I don't forget about it. When we have two congruent sides, we have an isosceles triangle. So I know my side is already going to be isosceles. So now let me go ahead and now solve for x. Well, we know that all three angles add up to 180 degrees. We have this 90 degrees. So we have 90 plus 45 plus x we know is equal to 180. And then we can go ahead and solve. Well, 90 plus 45 is 135, plus x is equal to 180. We can then solve or subtract 135 from both sides. And now we get x is equal to 45 degrees. So now, what do you notice about this real quick? Both of our angles are the same, and both of the sides opposite those angles are also the same. So one of the things that we can also, in the last question that we did, if two sides are the same in a triangle, the angles opposite of them are going to also be equal. It's nothing that you need to know now. But if none of our angles are the same, that means none of our sides can be the same either. So even if I don't put tick marks, if you guys can solve and show that all of our side angles are not the same, then we can go ahead and know that all of our sides also can't be the same. The only way that we can have congruent sides is if the angles opposite them are also equal. And that's not something you need to know now, but it's just something that maybe jumped out at you when you noticed this. Oh, we had both of them are 45 and both of those sides are equal as well. In a triangle, you guys will learn this when you're learning geometry in more detail, that the side opposite of the angle, actually they correspond with each other. And when our angles are the same, the sides opposite will also be equal. And if none of our angles are the same, then none of our sides are equal. All right, but we just solve for x here. And now we can classify it using our angle measurement. Well, when we have a right angle, we know it is a right triangle. So to finish this classification, we need to write it in one sentence, and we write our angle first. So it is a right isosceles triangle. Right, and that is it. So for now, sometimes it might just be a variable in there. Sometimes we can do have a little bit more harder, where we can have 2x plus 1 as that angle instead of just x. But you know that all three of our angles add up to 180 degrees, and that's what you need to get out of this video. All right, that is it for this video.